where people typically begin to reflect on what they've done throughout the year. We start thinking about our New Year's resolutions, where most of us did not get out of January before we messed them up. How many, is that just me? There were hopes, but they weren't necessarily, there was nothing resolute about most of them. But I want to talk about how do we overcome some of these ghosts. So next week we're going to talk about overcoming the ghosts of Christmas past, dealing with shame. We'll be talking in a couple of weeks about getting over the ghost of past labels. But today I want to talk specifically about getting over the ghost of past offenses. Getting over the ghost of past offenses. This time of year, everything seems to be heightened. Your decorations aren't just normal decorations. They are amped up. I have a buddy of mine who has a nice backyard, and he has lights all year around by his trees, his palm trees, his pool. But when it comes time for Christmas, he actually prides himself in being like Clark Griswold, Christmas Vacation. And that's the big joke, because he's nothing like that. But he tries, and that is his goal. At my mother-in-law's house, it looks like a Hobby Lobby threw up in her living room. There are candles on display that we're not allowed to light, but they're there I don't know why you have a candle you can't light, but they're there. There's decorations everywhere, because this is the time of year where everything's blown up and magnified. The same thing is true when you're dealing with emotions, especially when you get around certain past family members, where emotions get ramped up. Shopping gets ramped up. Dinners get ramped up. And it's not always a good thing, especially when you're dealing with past offenses. Anybody know anybody who gets offended a lot? Raise your hand. Somebody who always gets offended. If they're here in this room, they're probably offended that I even brought up being offended. It's as if being offended has become some part of a national pastime. If you think about it, we get offended by everything. In a world where our opinions can get instantly tweeted or instantly posted, we're okay with different opinions as long as they don't offend somebody else. And we have so many almost sissies in America now that we're offended by everything. We get offended by people who think that somebody else should be offended. I know somebody once who got offended that somebody else wasn't offended because they thought that person should have been offended. And you look at them going, really? It's no wonder our generation is confused. We don't even know how to protest right. Have you been watching the news? They're hiring protesters. Hiring protesters doesn't work. But they have no idea, because everything's fine unless you disagree with somebody. And because you disagree, then we get offended. When it used to be, a disagreement led for an opportunity to exchange information and have a healthy discussion. Now we're just, I'm offended. I'm unliking you. Click. And when we should be offended at the politicians who are not keeping their word, at big business organizations that are stealing money and robbing from their employees, when you're dealing with real issues, we choose to be more offended at the stupid little things that really have no bearing in our lives. But if we don't get over those offenses, then our lives will always be stuck. In fact, I was thinking about this the other day. If you live your life completely in offense, then you'll always be on defense. If you're always living some kind of offensive life, then you'll always be defensive in your reactions. Meaning, when things are trying to move forward in your life, you'll always be trying to stop it. There'll always be a hindrance to progress. Now, I don't want anybody's feelings I don't want to be offended by me. So let's talk about some of my offenses. Things that I find myself getting offended this time of year. This is just me, and maybe I need therapy. But when I'm driving on the freeway, I don't have to let you in. I was there first. But if I do let you in, and you don't wave, come on, that sets me off. Seriously. Don't you know who I am? I'm Koby Bryant. Anybody who's commuting knows exactly what I'm talking about. Without that obligatory thank you wave, at least acknowledge I let you in. How about this one? You're at the mall and you're trying to be kind because the doors are closed, and you open the door for somebody. And then 30 people walk by as though it's your job to open the door for people. And then they get upset when you do finally close it. And like, listen, my world does not revolve around you not knowing how to open your own door. This one happened the other day. I was at the top. We were going down the escalator at the mall. And two people decided that they were going to discuss what store they were going to next. So as we're sitting there waiting to go down the escalator, these two people were having a discussion. And I gave the old stink eye. Pastor Shanza, that was mean. I said, no, it is a law. You are not allowed to block the escalators when people are trying to shop. I think it's a federal law, actually. It's there. There you go. Why am I saying all these things? Because really we shouldn't be too offended by it. But we all struggle in some way with people who do the littlest things and we get offended. Now that we have technology, it's really easy to be offended. I mean, somebody doesn't like your post on Facebook and you, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. So-and-so invited you into a group and you didn't join that group. Oh, how dare they not join my group? Somebody's hit you on Instagram and you don't hit it right. I mean, look at some of these fun memes that we did for offenses. Everyone would stop being offended by everything. That'd be great. Whoever see that one. Let's look at the next one. This is great. I wish America was more concerned about offending God and less concerned about offending people. How about the next one? So my post offended you? Let me just change my worldview right quick. Now, we're having fun with this, but it's the truth. How many of you know somebody who got bent all out of shape because of Facebook or social media? It happens. It happens. So we got to be careful of it. We got to be careful of it. Like that person who texts you and wants an immediate response. And so you respond immediately. And they don't respond back. But you see bubbles. You see bubbles. You know they're writing. But they won't do it. What about the real offenses? What about the real times you're really hurt? What about those moments as you go to the holidays, you're at Christmas, and you look across the table at somebody who hurt you? You remember those painful words that they said when they questioned your parenting? You remember that one person who everybody has bent over backwards for that still belittles the family and rips you to shreds. The problem that we have is if we constantly live in offensive mode, we'll never move forward in our life. And I don't want us to be stuck this Christmas season. I don't want us to open gifts with a closed heart. I don't want to celebrate the love of Christ while hating somebody close to us. And I don't want to enjoy God's grace without extending grace to somebody who may have hurt me. Because an offended heart is the breeding ground of deception. So I want to talk to you about getting over these ghosts. First thing I want you to understand is your life is too short and your calling is too great to live a life in constantly offense. Let me say that again. Your life is too short and your calling is too great to always be offended. Small people hold big grudges. And if you're constantly living yourself where you're worried about what somebody said to you, or worried what somebody didn't say to you, or worried about who they voted for in this election, or worried about where they sat in church, or what songs you sing, or what's on the radio, or what's on television, if you're constantly living a life in offense, you can never be what God created you to be. Newsflash. You are against the world, period. And when you come in with the gospel of Jesus Christ, what the devil will try to do is stop that from progressing. Therefore, you become in the army of God, and you have a calling and a destiny, and that is in direct conflict with the world. Amen. Just look at how conservatives are vilified by our media. Anybody notice that lately? Yeah. We're offending them. Free speech is okay as long as you don't disagree with mine. But my calling is too great to constantly be in offense. Proverbs 19:11 says, a person's wisdom yields patience, It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. Overlooking the offense does not say that it did not happen. It just is the conscious decision to let it go. It also is a form of forgiveness. You see, when we have people who have wronged us, then we set ourselves up as the judge, jury, and executioner over the situation. And we'll start putting a debt on them that they can't pay. Or we'll say it like this, though. They'll pay for that. Am I the only one that's ever said that? He'll pay for that. She'll pay for that. We put a debt on them that they cannot pay, and it's better that we just remove that debt from them. The word overlook in Proverbs actually means to pass over. It means to just pass by it. So in other words, I want to rise so high that the offense cannot reach it. I'm going to pass over it. I don't want to live down here in the offensive land. I want to be up here where I'm flying so high, I am so close to God, that all this petty nonsense down here gets just flown right by. Because my calling is too great. And my life is too short. 3 great words that you need to put in your life right now. Get over it. Get over it. Somebody say, get over it.
Get over it.
Because if you don't get over it, then you're messing with people who really have no business in your life. People who are constantly living offensive, don't have friends, they're very lonely because the price is too great to stay with them. Your spiritual maturity depends on your willingness to face, forgive, and forget a past offense. Get over it. Because your calling is too great. There's destiny on you. There's destiny in you. Don't let your destiny be derailed. Become somebody, some dream killer shot you down. Don't let your destiny be derailed because somebody with a small heart and a small mind said something. Your calling is too great. So the first thing we're going to do with this is get over the small offenses. Get over being easily offended. Ephesians 4 verses 2 and 3 says, always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together in peace. What does that mean? It means that we need to make allowance for other people's mistakes. Can I tell you something? You're not perfect yourself. So we need to make allowance for other people to do things, to say things, to behave in ways that maybe they're not knowing what they're doing. Sometimes they do. But you're not perfect either. We love to judge people by their actions, but we want people to judge us by our intentions. So give somebody else the same respect that you would want from them. I know a guy, when I was working in MetLife, they sent me into a new territory, and I was actually opening it back up again. And there was a business deal that was on the table that had a lot of moving parts because it involved hundreds of thousands of people. It would not be a big commission for me, but it was a big commission for the broker. And I've learned that if you help enough people get what they want in life, they'll help you get what you want in life. Come on. So I wasn't working for my commission, I was working for his commission because this potentially could drop an additional $50,000 in commission over the next few years to me. How many of you realize it is in my best interest to help him get what he needs? Does everybody follow that? Problem was, this guy was mean. And he had been tearing people apart. And they were sending out vice presidents to this guy. So they said, well, why don't you go in because you're brand new. Maybe he'll be nicer to you. And they just took me a couple questions finding out that, this guy wasn't necessarily mean. Oh, yeah, he snapped at me. He yelled at me. And I stopped and I asked a couple questions. And I realized that he had a wedding ring. And I saw pictures of his wife. I said, tell me about your wife. Why do you want to know about her? I just sensing, I need to know. His response was, she's just been diagnosed with cancer. He wasn't mean. He was angry and he was scared. And all it took was for me to realize that it's not my world and it's not about me. His life's purpose was not to make my life miserable. Now, once I asked the question, I realized the deal was critical to him. Not because he wanted the money, but he needed the money to pay for treatment. He needed to make sure that financially his family was set and wasn't drained. This was a big deal to him. But it was more than just, I want money. It was, I have to get this done so my wife can receive the experimental treatments that she needs. I busted my butt to get that deal done. And we did. By the time it was over, most of our conversations, all of them started with, how's your wife? How's your wife? How's your wife? Forget the numbers. How's your wife? Forget the numbers. How's your wife? By the time we were done, we'd open our meetings in prayer in front of our vice presidents. We got a deal done that to this day hasn't been duplicated. And I still get called from time to time. Just people saying, how is Koby? Where's Koby? I don't want to do a deal unless you talk to Koby first. I haven't worked with MetLife in 10 years. And I will still have people saying, find Koby, ask him, whatever he says we'll do. Because I took the time to overlook the small offenses, and I realized if I put myself in their shoes, maybe they're not mean, they just didn't get any sleep. Maybe they're not grumpy, they just got laid off. Maybe they're not angry, they just lost a home. And if I can overlook a small offense and I seek to understand the other individual, maybe I can keep more relationships in my life. Sometimes people have no idea that they're rude or that they're bossy. Some might be in a major trial. Sometimes they just make mistakes. But instead of being offended by people, let's find out what they're going through and show some compassion. We need to get over the idea that everything is about us. But Pastor, what about the big offenses? What if I have a right to be offended? There are some of you who have had such great tragedy in your life that there really is an offense, a painful one, that's hard to get over. Let me start by saying, offenses, big or small, clog the pipeline to God's blessings. Okay? Doesn't matter how the clog gets there, it will block it. So we got to find a way of getting a spiritual type of Drano and cleaning out that pipe. Doesn't matter how that clog got there. Offenses, there are very few things that will clog that connection faster than an offense. But it's hard to get over. I'm wounded. I'm scarred. You know what? The scars just remind you that the past is real. But my husband cheated on me. I understand. I have a right to divorce. And you also have a right to forgive. But I have a right. They hurt me. They talked about my parenting. Yeah? But the Bible is very clear that if we don't forgive other people, God won't forgive us. Let me read you a verse. Colossians 3:13 says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you. So, it's a good idea to forgive others. The Lord forgave you, so it's helpful to forgive others. Put that back up. The Lord forgave you, so you must. In the Greek, the word must means must, have to, non-negotiable. I know it hurts. But you're not forgiving them for them. You're forgiving them for you. We're going to be in a situation this week where there was a family member who made an awesomely huge offense to us. And then try to justify it and keep it going. In my righteous indignation, the last thing you do is talk about my children. The last thing you do is talk about my children. And so it was on. Bam! And I am loaded. And I'm not proud of it. I'm just showing you your pastor's not perfect. But for somebody who gets paid by my words, and I try to use them to encourage, if I'm not careful, I can rip people to shreds. And I did. And this week, we're having to deal with this individual begging for forgiveness, seeking reconciliation, because life is too short. Was there an offense? Oh, yeah. Did they start it? You better believe it. Did I finish it? Yep. And as a result, now the holidays are going to be awkward? Nah. My column's too big for that mess. What about you? What do you need to overlook? There's only two things you can do with a major offense. You can rehearse it or you can release it. You can rehearse it or release it. But he abused me. Rehearse it or release it. I was molested. Rehearse it or release it. They stole from me. Rehearse it or release it. What are you going to focus on? I'm not saying act like it didn't happen. I'm saying let it go. And it may start with you simply saying, Lord, I'm not going to hate that person today. I don't like him, but I'm not going to hate him. A lot of people would say, Pastor, no, listen, sometimes you got to take baby steps. Okay, Lord, I'm not going to think evil of them today. Okay, Lord, I'm at least going to pray that they don't die in a car accident on the way home. How do I know this works? Because I've had to do it myself. Step by step. Release it. Let it go. Because most of the time, anyways, the people who offended you don't even know the offense exists. Or if they do and they haven't made it right, they don't care. So you got a choice. Live your life letting somebody else controlling your future, or step back into alignment with God and bring the forgiveness. Release it. Get over it. As Shalom comes back, a perfect example that I want to say and show how to do this is with a character in the Bible named Joseph. Joseph had a little bit of an attitude. He must have been a trendy hipster because he had a pretty coat. I saw a shirt the other day, don't feed the hipsters. It was a bear. That was kind of funny. I was about it. Joseph had a dream. It was a big dream. And unfortunately for him, he told his dream to the wrong people. You got to be careful who you share your dreams to, because not everybody's going to get it. He shared his dream with his brothers. As a result, they sold him into slavery. They wanted to get rid of it. They tried to stop the dream. The problem was it was a God-given dream. And you can't stop a God-given dream. The devil may try to stop it. But can I tell you, God's not worried what the devil tries to do. Sold Joseph into slavery. And he just happened to be bought by a gentleman named Potiphar, who was in the household of Pharaoh, in the courts. And immediately, Joseph began to work and work and work for his, I want to say employer, let's just call it what it is, his owner. Freedom gone. But he decided to keep the dream alive inside. By working and working and working. Until one day, his boss's wife, seeing as a piece of property is really what he was to them, wanted to cheat on her husband with him. He runs away. And in exchange, she accuses him of rape. He's thrown into prison. So now a young man with a dream gets sold into slavery, is succeeding in his new job, trying to get his life back together again, gets accused of rape, gets thrown into prison, and does the same thing there. He works at it, works at it, works at it. I'm going to get over it. I'm going to get over it. I can't let this hold me down. I'm going to get over it. Two people have dreams in prison. A cupbearer and a baker. I don't know where the candlestick maker was, but and he interprets the dream. And he gets forgotten. Until the time came when Pharaoh shows up with another dream. And he got remembered by the cupbearer. And in one moment, he went from the prison to the palace. And did the same thing there. Climbing in authority, climbing in influence. He ends up saving the entire Egyptian empire. And the day came when his brothers showed back up in the midst of a horrible famine. The ones who essentially killed him. That Joseph was gone. And I knew Joseph was there. And he had every right to hold on to his offense. Every right to hate his brothers for what had happened. Every right. But he realized that life was too short. And his calling was too great to hold on to the offense. Oh, sure, he messed with his brothers a little bit. But in the end, he said, what you meant for harm, God used it for good. Friends, you may have gone through a horrendous season in your life. I don't believe that God causes those seasons all the time to teach you lessons. Because I wouldn't make my son go through horrendous seasons to teach him anything. But I do know, no matter what you go through, God can turn it for good. If you don't live in the offense. Let's stand to your feet. With God's help, I can get over it. What used to hold me back can actually make me stronger. What hurt me in the past can turn to make me more like Jesus Christ. What weighed me down for years does not have to hold me back anymore. The mess that you've been in can turn into your message. The tombstones in your life can turn into stepping stones for your future. No matter what storm is raging in your life, don't look at the storm. Look at Peter. Look at Peter. When he had the word from Jesus, he was able to walk on what other people sink in. What about you? This Christmas season is the perfect opportunity for those offenses to be brought to the surface. Because many times we're offended by family and friends that we don't see but once a year. There's a reason we only see them once a year. I promise you there's going to be a football game on, or somebody's going to be fighting over the pumpkin pie or something. And that offense, it will trigger, it will trigger, it will trigger. We're dealing with a situation right now where two family members refused to show up at Thanksgiving together because they were mad at each other. Two Christians. Not good. If you constantly live in the offense, God won't forgive you because you haven't forgiven them. Does that make sense? Let's close our eyes. I want to pray for a second. Father, help us today to get over being offended. Help us today, Lord, to get past the ghosts of Christmas past offenses, from people who insulted our parenting, to people who physically hurt us, for people who hurt our children. Help us to see where those offenses were made, to get to the root of them, and then to let them go. Because our calling is too great. And our life is too short to live here. In Jesus' name, amen.